Patch 8 for Baldur's Gate 3 is lingering sometime in the near future, and my anticipation towards it gets me giddy. I'm so excited to jump into all 12 of the new subclasses, but outside of those subclasses, there have been a lot of great changes, quote unquote, under the hood. In this video today, I want to outline the new spells and all the minor changes to things like the Tavern Brawler feat, items, and what have you. If you've been following along closely with Patch 8 and consuming every bit of information, then you'll probably find nothing new in this video, and I want to be respectful of your time, so feel free to just simply shut the video down. But in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge my videos, let me give you a quick hit of some of the bigger changes. We'll be getting 5 new spells to take advantage of, with the 2 big standout ones being Booming Blade, which was recently balanced in a patch to the patch, and Shadow Blade, delivering a lot of great options for melee-centric casters. Tavern Brawler will now apply to your wild shape form, substantially boosting damage in melee. But wait, there's more. This will now apply to your spells and act as a spellcasting modifier, meaning that any spell you cast before going into wild shape that utilizes concentration will use your disgusting strength as a spellcasting modifier. Lastly, there was a nerf to the way elemental weapon gives a bonus to your character. Now it's purely an attack roll benefit rather than both an attack and damage bonus. This isn't world ending, but it will tone back the damage on abusing the Draconic Glaive in a lot of builds. That's the too long didn't watch this entire video, and we'll be going through more of the details on other changes, but you can navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. If you find the information in this video helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe before you head out, as each of those things helps me in a big way. I'll be covering tons of Patch 8 content when it goes live across new builds and fun thematic party comps, so make sure you check me out on Twitch, linked below, where I stream weekly. Let's get started on the Patch 8 changes you don't know about in Baldur's Gate 3. As always, since I was skipped on getting into the Patch 8 stress test, we will be using the BG3 wiki, and I'm not bitter about that, not at all. Why would you ask me about that? I'm not bitter, not even a little bit. But our first spell to talk about, well, since we're talking about our spells first, is Booming Blade. Now, this one is huge. This is a cantrip, and it's available to Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. As you can see here, it is available to any other class by taking a Magic Initiate feat. However, it is still not available via Spell Sniper. Since Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight also use the Wizard spell list, they can also access this cantrip at level 3, which makes it a really great cantrip to be utilized by what is already melee characters in Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight. But now when we have the Warlock and we take a look at Hexblade, Booming Blade isn't going to be available to you. Wizard with the Spellslinger is going to have that available to you. And well, just Sorcerer has that now available to you. And the big thing here is with Booming Blade, which is different than the way that this works in 5th edition D&D from what I understand. You strike with your weapon, which is a big part of that, afflicting your foe with a resonance that hurts them for 1d8 thunder when they move. Why that's important is that Booming Blade can take the place of using a weapon attack and then still benefit from your extra attack. So you use Booming Blade, then you get an extra attack on top of it. So you can really capitalize on doing a lot of damage with Booming Blade. Now, Booming Blade did have a patch that came out and removed the ability to use this per damage instance. You can see it says recharge per turn. It was allowing you to use this every time you used a weapon strike. So it was really disgusting. So you can see how this kind of scales out here, right? So damage, normal weapon damage, plus 1d8 thunder, plus 2d8 thunder when the target moves. And you can take advantage of this too when you use any and all of the just disgusting abilities that key in with thunder, right? You can use storm stuff across either the subclasses or the actual resonance gear that will trigger more resonance. And remember, when you get I think it's 4 or 5 stacks of resonance, you knock things prone, making it even easier to do just total amounts of crit damage into their face. Again, here, normal weapon damage, 2d8, 3d8 when the target moves. So getting this condition on them is really nice, and getting the amount of damage that this can do, since this cantrip uses a weapon attack roll, it qualifies for extra attack. So it's just very nice to really be able to turn on a lot of damage with your Eldritch Knight, your Spellslinger, your Arcane Trickster, your Hexblade, however you want to really deal this out. And like I said before, too, Thunder being the primary form of damage here is really huge because it gives us the ability to bypass majority of resistances in the game. So let's go back to that list, and don't worry, we're going to jump back to all these too. For our next one, into Bursting Sinew, which is basically Corpse Explosion. This cantrip is added to the Cleric and Wizard cantrip lists. It is available to any other class by taking a Magic Initiate feat, and since Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight both use that list, they can get that at level 3. This is a cool one here. Just add some fun thematic corpse bursting abilities to your character. It does 1d8 piercing damage, explodes a corpse, causing it to impale those around it. If I jump over here to this, you can see that it does do a dex save, which is unfortunate because dex save can be pretty often resisted. And what's also kind of crappy about this too is that it is not like one of those spells that says if the target resists, still do half damage, which is always really nice, right? Like when you take a look at something like Spirit Guardians, it still does half damage even if they resist. So you can get a lot of benefit out of it. But it does scale up to 2d10 and to 3d10 at levels 5 and 10 respectively. And it's a nice way to kind of open up some good damage on a character right out the gate, because remember, it is a cantrip. Having that ability as a cantrip is just nice. It gives you the ability to use this without worrying about spell slots, and when you get the advantage of being able to use it into a pack of things, it can be pretty cool. Remember too, this is necromancy, so you can play along with this with any kind of necromancer build you're going with. Go back to our list, into Shadowblade. Now, this is one of the big ones I was talking about earlier. It is awesome because it gives us the ability to use Shadowblade outside of the ring, and it also now grants proficiency. So it says right here, previously a version of the spell was available via the Shadowblade ring. Now you don't need that. You can just use it. It is now a normal spell in the Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard spell lists. Since Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight also use it, you get the same thing here, but they get it at 7 and 8. So Arcane Trickster gets it at 7, and Eldritch Knight gets it at level 8. And that's a really great ability because psychic damage is really nice because you're doing 2d8 plus your strength or dexterity modifier, an additional psychic damage. And you can ramp up psychic damage with a lot of capabilities, especially if you're a Gith, taking advantage of the Gith specific gear. You can really, really have a lot of fun with this. And if we go one more. So let's say here, or let's take a look here. When you use the sword to attack a target that is in dim light or darkness, you make the attack roll with advantage, which is even better. The Shadowblade can be unequipped and equipped again, but must remain on the spellcaster's person. And it is an illusion spell. So you can use things like the, I think it's called the Spell Trickster's Ring, which allows you to have a lot of fun too with illusion and cantrips and such. It is a level 2 spell though, so just don't get that confused with an actual cantrip. And the nice thing is that this uses a bonus action to take advantage of. It's not a bonus and a primary action or just a primary action. It's just simply a bonus action. So you can turn this on and then use it in the same turn if you so wish, taking advantage of your extra attacks and what have you, because you're just arming yourself with this. Now, when you upcast this to 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th level spells, you do 3d8 or 4d8 psychic damage, then you add in your modifier. So this can be very, very abused, and you can do a disgusting amount of damage with this too, especially if you're going with some sort of like skulking build. You're taking advantage of something that can kind of, well, stay in dim light. And there, again, just to kind of fall into that theme as well, there's a lot of Dark Justiciar gear that has that same theme attached to it. Like if you were to put this on your gear, you'll like get other things that say, hey, you're using this, it's going to give you these bonuses in dim light, either it be crit strike, whatever it is. You'll be able to really stack a lot of benefits with the Shadowblade. And I've seen so much stuff on Reddit, or my good friend Remortis has told me so much about how Shadowblade is really a big standout ability here next to Booming Blade. And I'm really excited to play with this because what I like about it the most is it delivers a lot of really fun functional psychic damage into a melee character that doesn't rely on a lot of high level spells. And I think that's one of the coolest things about it, is because it allows you to do this psychic damage character in a reliable way and tap into a lot of the psychic damage bonus, what's it called? Gear. So you can have a lot of fun here. You can see at one point, I think it was a cantrip, and that's why now it says is now a standard spell. And also this, the caster will now have innate proficiency with the summoned weapon, so wizards and sorcerers who lack short sword proficiency will still be able to use it to its fullest potential. So a lot of really fun things that can happen here with this when we take a look at psychic gear in the future, but that is not today. Staggering Smite is our next one. Now, I'm never really keen on these abilities, to be totally honest with you. But previously this spell existed as an NPC only ability, but has been added to the Hexblade's spell list. Currently is exclusive to that class and not selectable even through Magical Secrets, which lets Bard learn Banishing Smite, which is only Bard with Magical Secrets can learn Banishing Smite, and now the Hexblade. Only 2 characters I can tap into that. Watch, I'm wrong. What a great video. So Staggering Smite here, let's go ahead and pop over to the actual details, is a level 4 evocation spell, and possibly stagger your target here. Remember, stagger does a disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks and can't take reactions. So keep that in mind. Again, it's a bonus action, but it says right here, cost and cost on hit. So I don't know why it divides it like that. I just don't like any of the smite spells because they're like that most of the time. And it requires concentration. So for me, it's just a very, I'd have to personally test this and see how it really works out, because I'm sure this can be worked in conjunction with Shadow Blade to do a disgusting amount of psychic damage. It's just really a pain in the ass to deal with using both your action and your bonus action and now concentration and having to deal with all that, how that all works, right? So it's one of those things that I'm always wrestling with, right? I'm always like, do I really want to use this ability? Do I really want to do this or that? But you can see how this is going to be a pretty awesome capability if you work this in conjunction with a lot of other things, right? The Paladin, so this is normally a Paladin spell, but Paladins do not reach 4th level spells in Baldur's Gate 3. See Smite for additional functionality information. So they're fun abilities. I just don't like all of the investment that Smites cost you. And I'm sure, though, that because of the way Shadowblade works and because Psychic is a really stackable, bonusable damage effect, I'm sure you can get a lot of really great mileage out of this one versus, say, not Branding Smite, but the other one, Searing Smite, I think it is. The one that's just pure fire damage, where it's like fire damage is resisted so heavily. So I really want to play around with this once we get access to the full patch notes. I'm sorry, the full patch, but you can see that is going to be an interesting addition to the Hexblade Cleric. And our last one here is Toll the Dead, which is a new cantrip being added to the Cleric, Warlock, and Wizard cantrip lists. It is available to any class by taking a Magic Initiate feat as well. Since Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight also use the spell list, they will again access cantrip at level 3. This is an interesting one because it will do necrotic damage, which is nice. I think the only other necrotic damage dealing cantrip is Bone Chill. But Toll the Dead deals necrotic damage and increases its damage if the target has already been damaged. So, ring the bell of impending doom. If the target is at full health, you deal 1d8. Otherwise, you do 1d12. Which at the beginning of the game, that's a nice amount of damage to do. If you're playing with the new Death Cleric, you can split that too as well, because the Death Cleric has the ability to get, I believe it's multiple targets whenever they use a necrotic damage-based thing, or maybe it's necromancy. I think it's necrotic damage. What a cool YouTuber I am. Just can't know his own fucking material. But this does scale to be quite good. 2d12 and 3d12. It's not the most amazing ability, but any fun new cantrips added to the game adds a lot of flavor into builds and a lot of character play too. That just makes it a little bit more fun to do things rather than just simply sticking to, hey, just use these cantrips because they're really good and don't bother with anything else. This gives us different damage types into the cantrip section and allows for a lot more quote unquote build diversity with that, which I like a lot. And on top of it too, the Death Cleric can take advantage of it. So Toll the Dead, I think, will be a very fun one added into the mix here to beat off on a dead horse. I think the Death Cleric is going to take the most advantage out of this one, but still, I think a lot of other kind of Death Knight focused builds will still have a lot of fun with this. We've talked about some new spells. Let's now talk about all of the more miscellaneous changes happening to the game. So scrolling down here, I've highlighted some stuff so you can see anything in green. Well, it's kind of like vaguely green, right? And then vaguely red is a buff. Red is a debuff. So to start us off here, we have Tavern Brawler. So Tavern Brawler in wild shape form should now correctly add damage to unarmed attacks. Previously, this only worked in Tactician difficulty and below. So now if you're doing honor mode, you'll be able to take advantage of this. Does not apply to Slayer form, so keep that in mind. But the bonus damage, this is the most disgusting part. The bonus damage while wild shape applies to all damage dealt, including spell damage. For example, Spike Growth cast by a wild shape druid will deal bonus strength modifier damage every time a creature moves. That is such a huge amount of damage for a very quick, easy, accessible spell that is already really strong. And when I first looked at this, I was like, surely they don't mean that Tavern Brawler will give it its bonus. They're like, no, it says right here, will deal bonus strength modifier damage. So This requires actual practical testing to see how disgusting this is. And I've used the word disgusting maybe 7 times in this video, but it looks to be really strong. And I'm really excited to see how this works. And another one too, that's a really great example. Some wild shape attacks like Grounded Thunderstrike deal multiple instances of damage. The Tavern Brawler bonus damage will be applied to each of them, which I think makes for a really cool possible Moon Druid build where you do focus on going with the Myrmidons. And I think that's one of the things that kind of sucks is I think a lot of people don't typically go with the Myrmidons for the end game Moon Druid builds. They always go with something different. This really, I think, empowers the Myrmidon to be a really strong option to add a lot of damage because of Tavern Brawler. Now, one of my favorite things to do in a lot of my builds is use the Draconic Glaive, which gives you this Draconic Elemental Weapon. This spell imbues a weapon with a chosen energy type, increasing its damage and accuracy. This item spell is similar to the Paladin spell, Elemental Weapon. So, and also Elemental Age, which is on, it's a flail of the ages, that's it. So what they've done is Elemental Weapon now gives a +1 bonus to attack rolls and 1d4 elemental damage. Previously, it gave a +1 enhancement bonus and 1d4 elemental damage. So what that would mean is it would get, it even says it right here. This results in -1 of damage overall, because a +1 enhancement bonus. So when you take a look at a short sword +1, that +1 applies to the attack roll and to the damage. This is changing it to only give you a +1 to the attack roll because you already theoretically get that bonus because of the 1d4 damage bonus that you get here from the elemental damage. So this was scaling up and giving you too much damage for what the ability was supposed to be. So this applies to Elemental Weapon, the spell, Draconic Elemental Weapon from the Draconic Glaive, and Elemental Age from the Flail of Ages. It's not a huge nerf. It's literally 1 damage point less. It'll be all right. That 1 damage point less is also not going to be scaled too, right? So it's like you're not going to be able to really scale that across other capabilities, but still, it's fine. Storm's Fury, which is the reaction capability of the Storm Sorcerer, now deals lightning damage. Previously, it erroneously dealt thunder damage. It's not a huge thing. It's just worth noting. You know, Storm's Fury should just be, it shouldn't be that icon, right? Like if it says, oh, well, it erroneously was dealing thunder damage. Well, it was matching both color and icon. So lightning damage is fine because you can take advantage of, say, the Tempest Cleric's ability to amp up lightning or thunder damage. It's fine. There's no fallen damage there. The problem is that thunder damage is what triggers a lot of resonance effects and a lot of other items, and B, one of the least resisted damages in the game next to force. So you are now swapping to a more resisted damage type with lightning. So it's not a nerf, it's just a fix of a bug. So yeah, it says erroneously dealt. So it's just a fix of a bug, unfortunately, but it is one that's worth noting just because it's going to change your damage expectations, I suppose you could say. Denal's Gloves has the cooldown removed from the Defy Villainy feature. So Defy Villainy means that every time you, what effect is it? It is blinded, paralyzed, or poisoned. You immediately cast Lesser Restoration on yourself. The gloves cast it, not you. And what's nice is this can now be used an unlimited number of times instead of once per long rest. So it's a really cool way to get a lot of status effects off your character at the time in which you can get access to these, which is in Act 2. You get them from the Last Light Inn by going through a series of events that skews towards evil, is what I will say. Not to create spoilers. So if you do that and you get these gloves, Act 2, you're going to deal with a lot of status effects. So it's a good time to get them. They'll eventually fall off in their overall usefulness, but they're pretty cool nonetheless now. Shadowblade, we went into this a little bit ago, but it's just now that the spell Shadowblade now grants innate proficiency to the summoner. So you'll now gain proficiency in Short Sword when you use it. For the time in which I wonder actually if you could take advantage of that and use like a different short sword, or like dual wield a different short sword in your other hand. I don't know. We'll have to take a look at that. Healing Vapors from Water Membranes no longer apply wet to all characters. It's not a crazy thing, but it just means that you won't have to sacrifice casting healing on yourself and then create wet on everyone, which can ultimately result in big damage from cold or lightning effects. So you don't have to worry about that now. Speaking of ice, Wall of Ice is probably one of my favorite spells. Level 6 evocation spell here that does a considerable amount of damage, but now correctly deals 10d6 cold damage with the ice cloud created when it is destroyed. Previously, it only dealt 5d6, so it's doubled up in its damage capabilities. The saving throw is still fixed DC 16 Constitution saving throw, however, though. It's just worth noting that this makes this a better level 6 spell. Bind Pact Weapon and Bind Weapon Bond are now correctly removed on changing class. So while that is not important, because you probably weren't abusing it intentionally, or even probably didn't even know you could, what is important, and I'm going to take the time to talk about this here, because it's not in this section. Hexblade has its own Bind Pact weapon that would give you all the benefits of using Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Blade has Bind Pact weapon, changes your damage, or changes your damage modifier to charisma, right? If you're on a warlock, versus and a Hexblade has the same thing. But what they've done is they've removed the Hexblade's innate extra attack at level 5 in a patch very recently. So the Hexblade now needs to use the the weapon pact to take advantage of getting extra attack. So if you were going to go with a Hexblade and just use maybe like Pact of the Tome, you can't do that anymore. To get your extra attack, you need to go into Pact of the Blade to get it. So just keep that in mind. It's not in these notes, but it was changed. Remortis, again, good friend, told me this thing because he got access and I didn't. Because he's cooler and I'm not, and I never will be. Can't come to my birthday party anymore, Remortis. Grasping Vines now uses a bonus action when upcast. Previously, it erroneously used a full action when upcast. It's actually a shockingly good spell to move things around. I'm sorry, to lock things down. My brain went immediately to Thorn Whip. And it's a great capability that now uses bonus action when upcast rather than full action, so you can get a lot more use out of it. Spittleweb Skepticism from Carnassus, if you don't know who this is, I will click this and you will find out. This guy. If you don't know who that is and you haven't gotten that far in the game, you will find out eventually. But now he just has more -6 AC rather than 4. And Amulet of the Drunkard here now correctly applies its healing effect every turn, which I believe is 2d6, 2d8, 2d4. Neither of those. But previously it only worked for a single turn. So this is going to be good as an amulet that the new monk subclass can use, Way of the Drunken Fist, to take advantage of basically you get drunk and every turn you get a 2d4 heal. That's awesome. It's really going to give you a lot of really cool potential because the other really good monk amulet just helps out with your key points. This thing keeps you topped off and replenished, which I think is really cool. You do unfortunately only get access to this in Act 3. Primal Strike, our last note here, is now required for wild shapes to deal magical damage. Previously, wild shapes of level 5 or higher always dealt magical damage for non-Moon Druids. Primal Strike only affects the pre-level 5 wild shape form. So Primal Strike here is an effect of the Circle of the Moon Druid that makes their beast form attack count as magical damage. It's not a crazy thing. It's just if you were using Druid of the Land or any other Druid that was legitimately going into your actual wild shape form rather than using your wild shape form for another currency, which most other Circle Druids do, you now don't have Primal Strike after a certain levelage, right? So you don't get access to magical beast attacks. So not a drastic thing, but it's just worth noting in case you were somehow relying upon that. But that brings our video here to a close. We covered a lot of things that are coming. And there's still more that's going to happen because most of the stuff that we talked about is subject to change. The patch is still in its quote unquote stress testing. So when that patch goes live, things are going to be awesome. Things are going to be cool. We get all sorts of subclasses that are really going to change up the, I don't want to say meta because it's a single player RPG narrative game, but I think it's going to mix up what a lot of people are defaulting to in a lot of their builds, right? Like one of the biggest and easiest go-to builds is just a 2 Bard, 10 Paladin, Barded in, right? That's like a really strong beginner build. But you can now just go 12 levels of Hexblade Warlock and have a very strong, really disgusting character. And I think that there's disgusting again, right? I think that all these subclasses are going to really give us a lot of really fun ways to play, but also ways that I think are thematically themed. Nope, thematically themed. That is you don't put those two together, but it is themed a little more towards the dark side of things, which is maybe a hint towards a party comp video that I'm working on that is themed around Sith. Who knows? Maybe I just gave you every bit of information I wanted to about that. But either way, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what you're excited about with patch 8. It is coming hopefully very soon. I'm hoping it comes here in March, if not in April, but only time will tell. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.